The Nexus archive station orbited nothing particularly interesting, which made it perfect for bureaucracy. Suspended in the gravitational dead zone between three unremarkable star systems, it served as the galaxy's most aggressively neutral meeting point. A place so boring that even the most belligerent species couldn't muster the energy to start a fight there. Ambassador Keth Moore, of the Vrex Collective, had been reviewing planetary admission applications for 6 standard cycles, and his compound eyes had developed what humans might call a twitch. The chitinous plates along his thorax clicked rhythmically as he processed yet another species' attempts to justify their worthiness for galactic citizenship. Most followed predictable patterns: ancient tribal conflicts, resource wars spanning millennia, the inevitable progression from planetary conquest to interstellar ambition. Then there was Earth's submission. "This cannot be correct," Keth Moore muttered, his translator struggling with the mixture of confusion and professional irritation in his native clicks. The holographic display before him showed humanity's complete military history. 127 years of documented conflicts. That was it. No prehistory, no ancient empires, no dynasty wars, just a neat little package that barely covered what most species considered their modern era. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's diplomatic representative, sat across the crystalline conference table with the sort of patience that suggested she'd expected this reaction. Her dark hair was pulled back in a manner that somehow managed to look both professional and vaguely militaristic, and her eyes held the particular gleam of someone who knew more than she was saying. "Is there a problem with our documentation, Ambassador Keth Moore?" she asked, her voice carrying the crisp neutrality of someone trained in interstellar diplomacy. "The problem," rumbled General Thek Koral from the Korthak delegation, "is that your species appears to have invented war sometime last Tuesday." The massive reptilian leaned forward, his scarred hide catching the ambient light. "My people have been fighting for 40,000 years. The Zenthians have documented conflicts dating back 60,000 years. And you expect us to believe that humans discovered violence in 2897? The Zenthian archivist, Quillseeker Voth, adjusted the flowing membranes around his elongated skull. Perhaps they experienced some form of cultural amnesia? Though that would be unprecedented among spacefaring species. Or perhaps, interjected Trade Coordinator Yix Fen of the Mercantile Consortium, her crystalline form refracting the room's light into dancing patterns, they are attempting to misrepresent their aggression index for more favorable trade agreements. Dr. Vasquez listened to the speculation with the serene expression of someone watching children argue about fairy tales. When the chamber fell silent, she folded her hands and smiled. "I assure you, our records are complete and accurate. We've submitted our full military history as requested by the Galactic Admission Protocols." "Full military history," Keth Moore repeated, consulting his notes again. "The American Civil Conflict, the Great European War, the Second Great European War, various regional engagements, the resource wars of the late 29th century, and the recent colonial expansion conflicts. That's comprehensive for your species?" "That's what we have in our official archives. Yes." General Thek Koral's laugh was like rocks grinding together. "Official archives? What about your unofficial ones?" "I'm not sure what you mean, General." Quillseeker Voth leaned forward, his membrane ears twitching with scholarly interest. "Dr. Vasquez, our preliminary cultural surveys of human media revealed numerous references to something called ancient warfare. Epic poems about siege conflicts, dramatic narratives involving massive armies, entertainment products depicting what appear to be significant historical battles. Yet none of these appear in your submission." "Those would be works of fiction," Dr. Vasquez replied smoothly. "Humanity has always enjoyed creating elaborate fantasy scenarios." "Fantasy," Thek-Koral growled. Your entertainment industry has remarkably detailed knowledge of siege tactics and battlefield logistics for fantasy. We're very creative. Kethmore's thorax plates clicked faster. Something about Dr. Vasquez's responses felt like trying to grasp water. Technically accurate, completely unhelpful, and somehow more frustrating than an outright lie. Dr. Vasquez, he said carefully, every species in this galaxy has a pre-spaceflight military history stretching back thousands of years. The pattern is universal. Tribal conflicts, resource competition, territorial expansion, technological arms races. You're asking us to believe that humanity simply didn't participate in this evolutionary trend until the year 2897? Not at all, Ambassador. We simply included only the conflicts that this century considers worth remembering for diplomatic purposes. The chamber fell silent. Trade Coordinator Yix Fen's crystalline form shifted colors from cool blue to an alarmed yellow. Considers worth remembering? Yes. Implying there are conflicts you consider not worth remembering? Everyone has embarrassing teenage phases, Coordinator Yix Fen. General Thek-Koral stood abruptly, his massive frame casting shadows across the conference table. You're saying your species has conveniently forgotten portions of your military history? I'm saying we've chosen to focus on the conflicts that remain relevant to our current diplomatic goals. Quill Seeker Voth's membranes had gone pale. Dr. Vasquez, the implications of selective historical documentation are concerning. What exactly constitutes relevant for your species? Dr. Vasquez's smile never wavered. Oh, you know how it is with record-keeping. Some events get filed under military history, others under cultural education, and still others under things we prefer not to discuss at dinner parties. We wouldn't want to bore you with every little skirmish. Every little skirmish, Kethmore repeated slowly. Exactly. We focused on the ones that seemed diplomatically significant, the recent ones, where we can still remember the point. And the others? Well, those are just history, aren't they? The silence that followed was the kind that precedes either great revelations or spectacular disasters. Ambassador Kethmore looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives, noting the same growing unease reflected in their various alien features. Dr. Vasquez sat peacefully in her chair, hands folded, expression pleasant, as if she hadn't just implied that humanity had casually omitted potentially thousands of years of warfare from their official diplomatic record because it didn't seem worth mentioning. Perhaps, Kethmore said finally, we should schedule a follow-up session to discuss your historical documentation procedures in more detail. Of course, Ambassador, though I should mention that our archival system is quite extensive. We're very thorough about categorization. Categorization? Oh yes, we have excellent filing systems. As the session adjourned, Kethmore couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's admission application had just become significantly more complicated than anyone had anticipated. 3 cycles later, Kethmore discovered that curiosity was a dangerous trait for a diplomat. His private research chamber aboard the Nexus station hummed with processing power as he fed search algorithms through every available database. What had started as routine verification had transformed into something resembling an archaeological dig through deliberately obscured information. The problem wasn't finding references to human conflicts, it was finding coherent ones. Search parameter, human historical warfare, he commanded the archive interface. Results cascaded across his displays, fragments, contradictions, and tantalizingly incomplete records. References to something called the Punic Wars appeared in 17 different databases, but no two agreed on dates, participants, or outcomes. A 30 years war that apparently lasted 30 years, which seemed inefficient even by galactic standards. Something called the Great War that was immediately followed by something called the Second World War, suggesting humans had numbered their planetary conflicts like software updates. A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. Colonel Jex Prime materialized in holographic form, the Korthak intelligence officer's scarred features twisted with frustration. Keth Moore, your inquiry about Sol system surveillance has yielded interesting results. Define interesting, Colonel. Our deep space reconnaissance avoided that sector for the past 3 millennia. Avoided? The Korthak avoid nothing. Zex Prime's growl carried undertones of embarrassment. Standard atmospheric analysis indicated recent large-scale industrial combustion, the kind that follows extensive urban warfare or systematic resource extraction. Our scouts classified it as a post-conflict recovery zone and marked it for re-evaluation in a few centuries. Kethmore's compound eyes focused sharply. You're telling me your military intelligence marked Earth as a war zone for 3,000 years? Not a war zone. A recently concluded war zone. The atmospheric signature suggested whoever had been fighting was probably finished and rebuilding. We didn't want to interfere with their recovery period. How considerate of you. It seemed prudent. The energy readings were substantial. Before Keth Moore could respond, another transmission arrived. Quillseeker Voth appeared in split-screen format, his memorial membranes practically vibrating with scholarly excitement. Ambassador, I've been cross-referencing human cultural exports with known historical patterns. The inconsistencies are fascinating. Explain. Their literature contains detailed descriptions of siege warfare involving something called Greek fire, but no historical record of who the Greeks were. They have epic poems about 1,000-ship naval battles, but no documentation of the civilizations that built such fleets. Most intriguingly, they produce entertainment about conflicts involving millions of casualties, which our xenosociologists assumed was artistic exaggeration. Colonel Jex Prime interrupted. Millions? That's genocidal scale warfare. Precisely why we dismissed it as fiction. No species conducts warfare on that scale and maintains stable planetary civilization. Unless, Keth Moore said slowly, they've become very good at recovering from it. A third transmission joined their conference. Trade Coordinator Yix Fen, her crystalline form cycling through agitated color patterns. Gentlemen, I've completed the economic analysis you requested. Earth's resource consumption patterns are unprecedented. In what manner? Voth asked. They show repeated cycles of massive resource depletion followed by intensive extraction and reconstruction. Every few centuries, their industrial output drops to near zero, then rebuilds to higher levels than before. It's as if their entire civilization regularly collapses and reinvents itself. Keth Moore felt his thorax plates lock together, a Vrex response to existential confusion. You're suggesting they've been having civilization-ending wars and nobody noticed? I'm suggesting they've been having civilization-ending wars and getting better at cleaning up afterward. The implications hung in the digital space between them, like unexploded ordnance. Colonel Jex Prime spoke first. How does a species develop interstellar capabilities while regularly destroying their own infrastructure? Practice, Voth suggested weakly. Yixfen's form shifted to deep purple, the consortium equivalent of profound unease. I've analyzed their colony world development patterns. Every human settlement shows the same architectural features: redundant infrastructure, modular urban planning, and defensive positioning that suggests they expect their cities to require rebuilding. They build assuming they'll need to start over, Keth Moore realized, repeatedly. Another chime announced an unscheduled transmission. Dr. Vasquez appeared in the conference space, her expression pleasantly professional. Ambassador Keth Moore, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. The 4 alien representatives stared at her, with the collective expression of people caught researching their dinner guest's criminal record. Dr. Vasquez, Kethmore managed. We were just conducting routine verification procedures. How thorough of you. I thought you might have questions about our filing systems. Your filing systems. Oh yes, we're quite proud of them. Very comprehensive categorization protocols. Colonel Jex Prime leaned into the transmission field. Dr. Vasquez, our intelligence indicates your species has been conducting large-scale warfare for millennia. Where are those records? Filed appropriately, Colonel. We maintain excellent archives. Filed where? Well, that depends on the conflict. Ancient territorial disputes go under cultural heritage. Resource wars get classified as economic development history. Ideological conflicts become philosophical studies. Religious wars are archived under mythology and folklore. The silence stretched until Quill Seeker Voth found his voice. You file your wars under mythology? The really old ones, yes. They make excellent teaching stories. Teaching stories? For children. Very educational. Helps them understand consequences. Yixfen's form had gone completely transparent with shock. You use historical genocide as children's bedtime stories? Not bedtime stories, educational programming. We find that young humans learn ethical behavior better when they understand what happens when their species gets carried away. Kethmore's translator finally caught up with his racing thoughts. Dr. Vasquez, are you saying that humanity has been systematically reclassifying historical warfare to avoid diplomatic complications? Not at all, Ambassador. We're saying we've learned to organize our mistakes efficiently. Your mistakes? Every species has them. We just got better at filing. The conference space fell silent except for the ambient hum of processing systems and the distant sound of several alien worldviews quietly restructuring themselves. Dr. Vasquez smiled warmly at the camera. Should I schedule another follow-up session to discuss our archival methodologies in greater detail? The emergency session convened 12 hours later in Conference Chamber 7, the Nexus Station's crisis resolution facility, equipped with enhanced security protocols and enough diplomatic immunity to handle small-scale wars, which, given the circumstances, seemed grimly appropriate. Representatives from 47 species had arrived on short notice, their various forms of anxiety creating a symphony of clicks, growls, harmonic vibrations, and bioluminescent distress patterns that the chamber's environmental systems struggled to accommodate. Director Cale Voss of the Nexus Authority called the session to order with the sort of grim efficiency reserved for genuine emergencies. The ancient Etherean's form flickered between dimensions as he spoke, his voice carrying harmonics that bypassed translation protocols entirely. We are gathered because preliminary analysis suggests Earth's admission documentation may represent an unprecedented case of historical creativity. Merchant Captain Drex of the Hegemony Trading Fleet raised a manipulator appendage. Director, our shipping routes through Sol Sector show something disturbing. Human colony worlds display construction patterns we've never encountered. Elaborate, Captain. Every settlement, from their first extrasolar colonies to their newest frontier outposts, is built in the same configuration. Central civilian zones surrounded by industrial districts, with transportation networks designed for rapid evacuation and infrastructure positioned for reconstruction. Ambassador Plex 7 of the Silicon Collective processed this information through quantum matrices before responding. Our geological surveys of human worlds reveal similar anomalies. Subsurface archaeology indicates repeated cycles of construction, destruction, and rebuilding spanning approximately 8,000 years. Each cycle shows technological advancement despite apparent civilizational interruption. Kethmore found himself speaking without conscious decision. They're not just recovering from wars, they're anticipating them. Worse than that, interrupted Commander Itikresh of the Border Patrol Forces. "We've been monitoring human expansion patterns for the past century. They don't colonize systems. They prepare them." "Prepare them for what?" "For whatever comes next." Director Kale Voss's dimensional form stabilized slightly, usually a sign of increased attention. "Commander, your report suggested evidence of systematic preparation." "Explain." "Human colonies establish redundant everything. Multiple spaceports, distributed manufacturing, independent food production, separate communication networks. It's not colonization, it's insurance policy." Trade liaison. Vex Marin of the Outer Rim Confederacy adjusted her vocal sacs nervously. "Our economic modeling suggests something else. Human trade patterns indicate they're not planning for growth. They're planning for interruption." "How so?" "Every human economic agreement includes clauses for force majeure events that go far beyond standard natural disasters or political instability. They plan for scenarios involving societal reorganization, technological regression, and cultural discontinuity, as if they expect their own civilization to periodically restart." The chamber's environmental systems hummed louder as 47 species processed this information simultaneously. Director, called Chief Archivist Zen Tola of the Historical Preservation Society, "Our deep archive analysis has uncovered something relevant. Human data preservation follows patterns we've never encountered. They maintain what they call crisis archives, sealed information caches designed to survive civilizational collapse and facilitate reconstruction." "That's actually quite prudent," admitted Quillseeker Voth. "Prudent, yes, but the archives aren't designed for natural disasters or external invasion. They're designed for recovery from self-inflicted damage." Another uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. Dr. Vasquez's transmission request appeared on the central display. Director Kale Voss approved the connection, and humanity's representative materialized with her characteristic serene expression intact. "Good day, everyone. I understand there are questions about our documentation practices." "Dr. Vasquez," Kale Voss began, "this emergency session has uncovered evidence suggesting humanity maintains systematic preparation for civilizational interruption. Can you explain this phenomenon?" "We prefer to call it learning from experience, Director." "What experience?" "Oh, the usual, societal miscalculations." Commander Itikresh leaned forward aggressively. "Dr. Vasquez, your species appears to have been systematically destroying and rebuilding your civilization for 8 millennia. That's not miscalculation. That's pattern behavior." "Well, when you put it that way, it does sound a bit repetitive." "A bit repetitive?" Merchant Captain Drex's translator struggled with the mixture of outrage and disbelief in his native tongue. "You've been having apocalyptic wars every few centuries and treating it like scheduled maintenance." "I wouldn't say apocalyptic, Captain. More like comprehensive reorganization events." Ambassador Plex 7's quantum matrices sparked with computational strain. "Dr. Vasquez, our analysis suggests your species has perfected the art of civilization-ending warfare while maintaining technological advancement. How is this possible?" Dr. Vasquez paused, her expression shifting from diplomatic neutrality to something resembling professional pride. "Well, if you're going to make mistakes, you might as well learn from them efficiently." "Learn from them?" "Oh yes. Each cycle taught us something new about infrastructure resilience, social organization, technological preservation, and recovery logistics. By the 15th or 16th collapse, we'd developed quite robust protocols." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien languages as 47 species attempted to process the implications simultaneously. Director Kale Voss restored order through harmonic enforcement. "Dr. Vasquez, are you stating that humanity has deliberately refined the process of civilizational destruction and reconstruction?" I'm stating that when something keeps happening, you eventually get good at managing it. Managing it. The early collapses were terribly inefficient. Took centuries to rebuild, massive knowledge loss, lots of unnecessary suffering. But by the medieval period, that's what we call cycles 7 through 12, we'd developed much better crisis management protocols. Chief Archivist Zen Tola's voice carried a note of horrified fascination. You numbered your civilizational collapses? For record-keeping purposes, yes, though we prefer the term cultural transition phases. Sounds less dramatic. Trade liaison Vex Marin's vocal sacs had gone completely flat. How many cultural transition phases have there been? Dr. Vasquez consulted a small device with casual efficiency. Currently, we're in iteration 23, though there's some debate about whether the Industrial Revolution counts as a separate phase or a continuation of iteration 22. Iteration 23, Kethmore repeated faintly. Yes, this one's been going quite well, actually. We've had interstellar capabilities for over a century now, which is a new record. A new record. Previous iterations rarely made it past metallurgy before someone started a war that got out of hand. The silence that followed was so profound that the station's life support systems seemed unnaturally loud. Director Kyle Voss spoke with the careful precision of someone trying not to accidentally start an interstellar incident. Dr. Vasquez, you've submitted documentation for only the 23rd iteration of human civilization. That's the current one, yes. The others are archived under different categories. What categories? Educational material, mostly. Some mythology, some cautionary tales. The really embarrassing ones we file under things we don't discuss at diplomatic functions. The holographic projection that materialized above the conference table was unlike anything the assembled representatives had seen. Layer upon layer of data cascaded through three-dimensional space. Not the neat, sanitized diplomatic submission they'd reviewed before, but something that resembled a vast, breathing organism of interconnected information. This, Dr. Vasquez announced with evident satisfaction, is our complete historical archive, all 23 iterations, fully cross-referenced and categorized according to their utility for current diplomatic relations. Director Kale Voss's dimensional form flickered rapidly, the Etherian equivalent of stammering. Dr. Vasquez, this archive appears to contain approximately 40,000 years of documentation. 43,612 years, actually, though the first few iterations are poorly documented. Primitive record-keeping. The projection shifted, highlighting different data clusters in colors that hurt several. Species' optical organs. Wars that consumed continents appeared alongside casual references to weapons that sterilized biospheres. Conflicts where victory conditions included the complete erasure of opposing languages, cultures, and genetic lineages were filed next to agricultural innovation reports. Ambassador Kethmore's translator had given up trying to process his emotional state. Dr. Vasquez, your species has been conducting warfare that makes our most aggressive civilizations look restrained. Well, we had a lot of practice. Practice. You have to understand, Ambassador, early iterations were quite wasteful. Iteration 7 lasted only 43 years before someone invented a weapon that turned sand into glass on a continental scale. Very embarrassing. We learned to be more sustainable. Commander Yitik Resh's military conditioning finally cracked under the weight of what he was seeing. Sustainable warfare? The key breakthrough came during Iteration 15. We realized that complete victory was actually counterproductive. Who would you fight next? So we developed more sophisticated conflict resolution methodologies. Sophisticated how? Dr. Vasquez gestured, and the display zoomed in on a cluster of data points. Well, we learned to end wars before they ended us. rotation of winning sides, managed resource depletion, carefully planned reconstruction phases. Much more elegant. Trade liaison. Vexmarin's voice had dropped to a whisper. You managed your own apocalypses? It was that or extinction, liaison. Natural selection, applied to civilizational design. The projection continued its revelations. Social engineering projects that spanned centuries deliberately induced dark ages to prevent technological overreach, planned barbarisms to maintain genetic diversity, and controlled collapses designed to reset cultural assumptions before they became civilizational vulnerabilities. Chief Archivist Zen Tola spoke with the reverence usually reserved for religious experiences. Your species has been conducting controlled evolution of your own society. Someone had to. We kept making the same mistakes otherwise. And this current iteration? Number 23 has been our most successful long-term stability experiment. We've maintained technological advancement while avoiding major civilizational reset triggers for over 8 centuries now. Director Kyle Voss managed to stabilize his form long enough to ask the crucial question. Dr. Vasquez, why are you revealing this now? Because you asked for our complete military record, and we provided exactly what was appropriate for diplomatic consideration. The recent conflicts, the ones still politically relevant, everything else is just educational background. Educational background. The point isn't the wars themselves, Director. The point is that we learned to choose which ones matter for current purposes. Silence stretched across the conference chamber as 47 species simultaneously recalibrated their understanding of humanity's place in the galactic community. Merchant Captain Drex found his voice first. Dr. Vasquez, your species has essentially weaponized selective memory. We prefer to think of it as strategic historical curation. Very important skill for sustainable diplomacy. Strategic historical curation. Oh yes? Most species either hide their violent past entirely or wear it like a badge of honor. Both approaches create unnecessary diplomatic friction. We simply file our violence according to its current utility. Ambassador Plex 7's quantum matrices had been running continuous calculations throughout the revelation. Dr. Vasquez, our projections suggest that humanity's admission to galactic society represents either the greatest diplomatic opportunity or the greatest threat in recorded history. Why not both, Ambassador? The projection began to collapse, folding back into the neat, manageable package of humanity's official diplomatic submission. As the layers of historical complexity disappeared, Dr. Vasquez's expression returned to its characteristic diplomatic serenity. The admission committee should understand that humanity's greatest strength isn't our capacity for violence. Most species can destroy things efficiently. Our innovation is that we've learned to forget violence efficiently. Director Kale Voss spoke with the careful precision of someone navigating uncharted diplomatic territory. And this makes you trustworthy. It makes us practical, Director. We remember what serves our current purposes and archive what doesn't. Very convenient for maintaining stable relationships with neighbors who might be concerned about our historical enthusiasms. Kethmore realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic diplomacy. A species that had solved the fundamental problem of how to be simultaneously honest and diplomatic about an inconvenient past. Dr. Vasquez, he said carefully, humanity's application is approved. Excellent. I'll forward the implementation protocols to your office. Implementation protocols? For setting up our first embassy. We'll need appropriate archival facilities, of course. Proper categorization is essential for maintaining good relations. As the conference dissolved and representatives returned to their respective vessels, Kethmore remained in the chamber, staring at the space where humanity's impossible archive had been displayed. The most dangerous species in the galaxy, he realized, wasn't the one that remembered every slight and prepared for eternal war. It wasn't the one that forgot its violent nature and repeated ancient mistakes. It was the one that remembered exactly what it chose to remember, forgot precisely what it chose to forget, and possessed the institutional wisdom to know the difference. In a galaxy full of species that were either too honest or too deceptive for comfortable diplomacy, humanity had achieved something far more unsettling. They had perfected the art of being selectively truthful, and they filed it all under things that make dinner parties more pleasant: